There's been, I think, a fair amount of pointing and staring and Trump getting very agitated at various times during the trial. At one point, people suggested he was sort of cursing under his breath at some of the testimony she was giving. So I think we can expect a bit more of that today.
Yes, it's time for Washington Whispers, where we cross the Atlantic to speak to our man in Washington. Washington correspondent of the Times and the Sunday Times, Alistair Dawber. Alistair, are you in Washington?
Yes, I am. Good morning, Matt.
What's the weather like with you, Alistair?
A bit overcast, a bit cloudy, but very, very warm. It's all very humid now. It's all getting very, very hot.
Well, storm clouds gathering for Donald Trump, do you see?
Very much so.
We'll pick our way through the various trials. How's the Stormy Daniels trial going?
Well, she took the stand slightly unexpectedly on Tuesday, and there's sort of the evidence you would expect from Stormy Daniels describing their relationship. She is on again today. There was a break in the trial yesterday, and she's back on today. There's been, I think, a fair amount of pointing and staring and Trump getting very agitated at various times during the trial. At one point, people suggested he was sort of cursing under his breath at some of the testimony she was giving. So I think we can expect a bit more of that today.
So that's the trial which is ongoing. Slightly better news for him on the federal criminal trial for keeping apparently classified documents in one of his bathrooms at Mar-a-Lago.
That's right. So he's accused of keeping hundreds of classified White House secret government papers that he was supposed to hand back when he left the White House in 2021. He goes on trial or he's meant to be going on trial at some point for keeping those documents. But the judge in the case, a woman called Eileen Cannon, has said there are so many pre-trial motions, so many challenges to the admission of evidence and so on, that she can't legitimately set a start date for that trial because we've got to hear all these different sort of objections and appeals. I mean, this is absolutely out of the Trump playbook. His strategy right from the start has been to delay, to put up obstacles to the trial starting, all in the hope, of course, that he can get to November, the presidential election, win that election against Joe Biden, and then because this is a federal case, just have the charges cancelled. He'd have the authority to do that.
And then the other case, the one, the state trial in Georgia, that's still even further in the distance.
Well, again, we're not even sure who the prosecutor is going to be in that case now. Fani Willis, the DA in Fulton County, which is essentially Atlanta, she had an affair with one of the other prosecutors. And of course, that's allowed Trump then to claim that due process hasn't been followed, that money that was taxpayer money that was meant to be used for the trial has been used for dinners and holidays by Fani Willis and Nathan Wade, the prosecutor. Now, those allegations are denied by the couple, or the former couple. They've split up now. But it allows Trump again to challenge whether or not Fani Willis should be the prosecutor. And again, for his benefit, he wants to delay, he wants to obscure, he wants to get in the way of the proceedings starting, and that's precisely what he's being able to do.
So that's the world of Donald Trump. Let's turn our attention to Joe Biden and what appears to be tensions, disagreements, rift even with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Joe Biden said his support of Israel's security is ironclad, but then in this interview overnight with CNN, he said he'd withdraw weapons if Israel invaded the city of Rafah, the last major city not to have come under attack, and where many civilians have moved to.
I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem.
So how serious is this point of division? I suppose it's a reflection of how far we've moved in terms of the language being used by world leaders from what they said immediately after the October the 7th attack to now. How serious is this, and will Benjamin Netanyahu take any notice?
No, I think it's the short answer to your last question. I mean, the tension, the frustration between the White House and leaders in Israel last night really burst out into the open with this CNN interview. We'd known for a few days that the Americans had stopped a supply of heavy bombs, of 3,000-pound bombs that had been destined for Israel because they feared it would be used in Rafah. There were about 1 million civilians who have been forced to move to Rafah because of the fighting and the conflict elsewhere in Gaza. The White House has been saying for weeks now that it believes that any attack on Rafah without a credible plan to save civilian lives would be wrong. The CNN interview last night really sort of laid bare the sort of differences of opinion. The Americans are dead set against it. They say they won't supply the weapons that Israel actually probably needs. It probably has the means to carry out the Rafah incursion if it wants to. But it's a real sort of, I think, a crossroads now in the American position in this war. Of course, at home domestically, Biden has to think about voters who are very much against the war and have been, at protests describing him as Genocide Joe and as a warmonger and so forth. But I think the relationship now between the Israeli government and the American government has reached a point where there's complete breakdown and utter distrust. I think there's a feeling in Washington, certainly, that the peace negotiations, the negotiations that are supposed to be moving towards getting a ceasefire in Gaza and then the release of the 130 or so hostages that are still being held, I think the Americans feel that the Israelis have a slightly different motive. They feel, I think, some people in the administration have a political incentive for the war to continue and for there not to be a ceasefire. I think that the relationship, particularly between Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu, has become pretty toxic. We know they've had some rows on phone calls they've had in recent weeks, and it's difficult to see, I think, now how the Americans will continue to offer their all-out support for the war. Yes, ironclad support for Israel's security, and when Iran attacks, the Americans will get involved and help to shoot down some of the cruise missiles and drones. But I think we'll see perhaps a bit more of an aggressive stance against some of the Israeli operations in Gaza, certainly from Washington in the next few weeks.
And you talk about the domestic politics of this, and clearly the left in America, you have been putting pressure on Joe Biden, including we talked last week about the protests and sit-ins and stuff at universities. Is it too obvious to sort of draw a connection between the protests and the growing anger with what's happening in Israel and this shifting in Joe Biden's position?
No, I don't think that's too simplistic at all. I mean, some of the protests, there's not only are they targeting the Israeli government, and in many cases are nakedly anti-Semitic, but they're also targeting Biden. They're also saying America shouldn't be doing this. And these are young people generally. These are people that the Democrats, young urban people that the Democrats should be able to rely on to vote. Now, these people aren't necessarily going to go and vote for Donald Trump, but if they stay at home in swing states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, where there are high numbers of students, that could really have an outcome on the election. I think Joe Biden is looking at the way America supports Israel and the way that Israel conducts the war, very much through the prism of him having to win an election in 6 months' time.
Just finally, Alistair, I spotted this story and I wondered what you could, if you could explain it. What's Rafe Fiennes, Catherine Bigelow, and Jerry Halliwell got in common?
Well, they've all been spotted in the last few weeks on the south lawn of the White House as Joe Biden walks across, waves at people gathered at the rope, and boards Marine One for the helicopter. It seems that it's become a bit of a celebrity hangout. Now, Scarlett Johansson was in DC a few weeks ago for the White House Correspondent Association dinner, and it looks as though she went into the White House. Rafe Fiennes has been here for a production of Macbeth at one of the big theatres here, and Jerry Halliwell, it seems, has been involved with some sort of initiative that's been put forward by a senator. So they've all taken the opportunity to go and swing by the White House and watch Biden in action. Apparently, the staffers in the White House are sort of very excited about all the celebs appearing there. Of course, it's not as if they don't see many famous people on a day-to-day basis, but it seems that this is a bit more glamorous for them.
So when Jerry Halliwell, you talk about the rope. So it's basically on the South Lawn. There is literally a rope, like you'd have, for a queue outside a provincial nightclub. And people can go and stand at the rope just to see the president walking across the lawn and getting into a helicopter.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to have gone through the security at the White House before. I mean, they can't just sort of wander up to the rope. It's not. But yeah, you can go and watch as he walks across, and there's usually some press there as well, and they'll shout questions, and so the staffers go out and just check that he's okay. He's got on the helicopter okay, but he often waves back and sometimes stops and has a chat with some of the people there, especially if he knows them. So, but it's something you can do. Something you can do if you go into the White House.
Well, there we are. And Joey Hannibal Speeding's on it. There we are. Lovely to speak to you, Alistair. Alistair Dawber, there, our man in Washington. Watch the Correspondent, the Times and the Sunday Times, the round of what's going on over there.